Good morning and thank you for joining us on Africa This Morning. My name is Beryl Ooro. It is the 28th of April 2014. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the top stories.
Taking responsibility, a very apologetic South Korean Prime Minister resigns of a slow initial response to the sinking of a ferry that left nearly 200 dead. History made, two popes declared saints by the Vatican. You have failed us. Zimbabwe's main opposition movement MDC suspends Morgan Tsvangirai as the party leader.
South Korean Prime Minister Chang Hong-won has resigned. He resigned yesterday morning over the government's response to the ferry disaster that happened on April 16th. The Prime Minister gave up his position, calling it his way to apologize to the families and the victims of the tragedy.
Two giant floats mark the location of the stricken Sewol ferry, which capsized off the southwestern coast of South Korea. It was full of students when it sank on April the 16th. More than 300 people have died or are missing and presumed dead. Divers are still trying to recover their bodies. A somber Prime Minister Chung Hong-won offered his resignation amid criticism of the government's handling of the disaster.
내각을 총괄하는 총리인 제가
The right thing for me to do is to take responsibility and resign as a person who is in charge of the cabinet. I thought it is the way of apology.
이번 사고가 발생하기 전 예방에서부터
On behalf of the government, I apologize for many problems, from the prevention of the accident to the early handling of the disaster.
못한 점에 대해 정부를 대표하여 국민 여러분께 사과드립니다.
Here, grieving parents storm rescue headquarters. They blame the government for the slow pace of the recovery and the frequent changes in information provided by the government. In the first few hours after the disaster, a provincial office announced that everyone had been rescued.
And still on the ferry tragedy in South Korea, investigators are seeking to arrest the last 4 crewmen from the sunken ferry that left more than 300 people dead or missing.
The 4 remaining crew members of the sunken South Korean ferry could soon be charged with abandoning passengers aboard a sinking ship. They've been questioned, and now investigators are seeking their arrests. One unidentified crew member said he didn't know any details about the ferry.
At that time, I didn't know how many students were on board for their school trip or how much cargo was being loaded on the deck.
More than 300 people, most of them students and teachers from the same school, are dead or missing.
Anyhow, I feel bad for the families of the victims and the people.
The ferry sank on April 16th, prompting a massive search team of more than 100 divers. Bad weather, strong tidal currents, and poor visibility, though, are hampering their efforts.
The water is so murky that I cannot even see the needles on my watch in the water. So when we retrieve a body from the ship, we can barely recognize that it's a human, but no more than that.
On shore, with each passing day, the outlook grows grimmer. The confirmed death toll on Saturday was 187.
To spiritual matters in the Vatican, Pope Francis has proclaimed 2 of his predecessors as saints of the Roman Catholic Church in an event that drew hundreds of thousands of people from around the world to join in celebrations at the St. Peter's Square.
In a historic event, Pope Francis was joined in Sunday's canonization mass by former Pope Benedict, who resigned last year. Pope Francis read the formal proclamation conferring sainthood on John Paul II and John the 23rd, who helped shape 20th century history. Nearly 100 foreign delegations were in attendance, including royal dignitaries and heads of state and government. Around 200,000 pilgrims from Poland and around the world were expected to take part in masses and was watched by roughly 1 million pilgrims and a vast TV and radio audience. The historic event has been billed by Italian media as 4 Popes Sunday. because it is the first time that two living popes have said Mass together and the first time two popes have been canonized at the same time. The 87-year-old German Benedict XVI, who retained his official title, has retired from public life and lives in a former monastery inside the Vatican city walls.
And back to Africa, infighting in Zimbabwe's main opposition party intensified over the weekend, with a splinter group announcing it has suspended the opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai along with other senior party officials for what they called dictatorial tendencies and also for failing to oust President Robert Mugabe.
The Movement for Democratic Change MDC faction said it suspended former Prime Minister Tsvangirai, his deputy Thokozani Kupe, chairperson Love Momoyo and 4 other senior party officials. The group, which includes Party Secretary General Tendai Biti, said Tsvangirai had violated the MDC's constitution by expelling Deputy Treasurer General Elton Mangome, who had called for his resignation. The MDC, formed in 1999 by an alliance of trade unions and civic groups, has been seen as the most credible challenger to 19-year-old Mugabe's grip on power. But it has been riven by tensions since ex-Premier Tsvangirai was beaten at the polls last year. Mangoma was expelled for defying the party directives after he suggested Tsvangirai should step down as leader of the MDC following last year's election defeat to veteran ruler Robert Mugabe. His call sparked furious disagreement within the party that degenerated into physical attacks, with suspected Tsvangirai loyalists beating Mangome in front of the party's headquarters. The party's treasurer Roy Bennett and other officials have made similar calls for Tsvangirai to resign after losing to Mugabe in the July 31st general elections.
To political matters in the Balkans, the self-declared People's Mayor of Slavyansk says he is willing to do a prisoner exchange with Kiev for the military observers they detained. The military observers, a group of officers reportedly from Germany, Poland, Sweden, the Czech Republic and Denmark, were detained on Friday at a rebel checkpoint while traveling with a Ukraine military delegation.
In the Ukrainian city of Slavyansk, where pro-Russian separatists are holding a group of international observers, the self-declared People's Mayor says he's willing to let them go for a price.
The Kiev junta has our fellows and comrades. Therefore, if there is a possibility, we are ready for an exchange.
He told a news conference capturing the observers for a swap was not a preconceived plan.
That was not our plan. But you understand that prisoners have always been coins to exchange during times of war. It's an international practice to swap prisoners. There's nothing scary about it.
German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier says the detained group from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe includes 4 Germans.
The OSCE is efforting a fast release in talks with the groups who have detained the observer mission. Of course, the OSCE has our full support.
More monitors are on the way to Slavyansk to seek the release of those detained.
The U.S. is conducting military exercises in Lithuania with the country's troops in a move aimed at reassuring the Baltics and Poland in the wake of the Ukraine crisis.
U.S. soldiers arrive in Lithuania for military exercises Saturday. Washington wants to reassure its Eastern European allies that NATO will protect them should they face Russian aggression as in Ukraine. Lithuanian President Dalia Grybauskaitė welcomed the troops at the airbase.
Today we know what our freedom and security are a matter of utmost significance for our allies.
U.S. Major General Richard Longo reiterated NATO's commitment to Lithuania's security.
With our persistent presence of training soldiers, let me make this clear. should Lithuania need NATO, I guarantee NATO will be there.
Okay. Mano Vardisia?
A total of 600 U.S. troops will be deployed to Poland and the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania for infantry exercises.
That means good weather. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
They are expected to remain in the region on rotation until the end of the year.
Any intervention in Lithuania will mean a violation against NATO territory. If just one of our guests is harmed, this will mean open confrontation, not with Lithuania, but with the United States.
The Baltic states, with their own Russian-speaking minorities, have been increasingly worried about Moscow after its annexation of Crimea, partly on ethnic grounds.
To Egypt, they want their rights and they have gone to the streets to demand them. Opponents of Egypt's military-backed government demonstrated as they headed towards the presidential palace in Cairo against a law restricting the right to protest.
Opponents of Egypt's military-backed government demonstrate against a law restricting the right to protest. Around 1,000 demonstrators took part in an unsanctioned march to the presidential palace in Cairo.
I came today to stand against the protest law and against the oppression happening in the country. Nothing changed, and we are still the same. We are still standing and chanting. We are still being beaten and jailed and killed. Nothing is new.
The law outlaws demonstrations that have not received police permission and was passed in November 2013. The demonstration was organized by a number of secular groups which oppose both the current military-backed administration and the Muslim Brotherhood. They burned a banner bearing the face of former army chief and leading presidential candidate Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Egypt has discovered its first case of the potentially deadly Middle East respiratory syndrome in an Egyptian citizen who had recently returned from Saudi Arabia. With this appearance of the syndrome, health officials now face a tough new challenge in confronting the often lethal virus.
The virus, which can cause coughing, fever and pneumonia, has spread from the Gulf to Europe and has already caused over 90 deaths. The patient, 27, is being treated at a Cairo hospital and is in a stable condition.
The patient arrived a day before yesterday in the night, before dawn from Saudi Arabia with corona disease. He underwent the necessary analysis quickly in around half a day, and his infection with corona was confirmed. It is a disease like any other chest disease. Supposedly, the most important thing is to prevent the spread of the infection and to put him under supervision in isolation to take the necessary medication. Dr. Adel Al-Dawi, the Minister of Health, is in the hospital visiting him. Dr. Amar Kandil and Dr. Am Khatib, the head of the medical sector, and with God's help, everything will go okay and he will get out of the hospital safely.
The man, who is from the Nile Delta, was living in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Saudi Arabia, which has been hardest hit by the MERS virus, announced on Friday it had discovered 14 more cases in the kingdom, bringing the total number to 313. Although the number of MERS infections worldwide is fairly small, the more than 40% death rate among confirmed cases and the spread of the virus beyond the Middle East is keeping scientists and public health officials on alert. A spokesman for the World Health Organization in Geneva said on Friday it was concerned about the rising MERS numbers in Saudi Arabia, urging for a speedy scientific breakthrough about the virus and its route of infection.
3 days of heavy rains and flash flooding in north and west Afghanistan have killed more than 100 people and left thousands homeless. The floods have prompted desperate pleas for help from the impoverished provincial authorities.
3 days of heavy rains followed by flash flooding have Afghans salvaging everything they can and scrambling for help. The floods have killed more than 100 people and left thousands homeless.
Our shops and houses have been destroyed because of the heavy floods. So far, we have not received any aid from the government.
The start of spring is traditionally a wet period in Afghanistan. The rains and floods have swept through 4 of the country's provinces. Government officials expect the death toll to rise in the coming days.
It is the first visit to Malaysia by a U.S. president since 1966. U.S. President Barack Obama attended a state dinner in his third leg of a 4-nation Asia trip. President Obama spoke, among other subjects, the need to upgrade diplomatic ties with Malaysia.
U.S. President Barack Obama gets the royal welcome from the Malaysian king as he arrives in Kuala Lumpur. The state dinner is complete with traditional song and dance. But on a more serious note, King Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah addressed missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370.
Your involvement since the beginning of the search and rescue mission and the ongoing recovery operation indeed exemplifies the strong commitment established between our two countries.
Obama's toast had a more hopeful message.
For while we may be different as nations, our people have similar hopes and similar aspirations. And we can draw strength in both our nations from our ethnic and religious diversity. We can draw hope from our history, and we dream of a brighter future for all of our children.
It's the third leg of Obama's 4-nation Asia trip. On the agenda for the visit is the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, a deal that would connect a dozen Asia-Pacific economies by eliminating trade barriers. Obama is the first U.S. president to visit Malaysia since Lyndon B. Johnson visited in 1966.
Please rise.
And to sports, 1 week after announcing he was coming out of retirement, superstar swimmer Michael Phelps competed for the first time since the 2012 London Games at the Mesa Grand Prix in Arizona. Finishing second in the 100-meter butterfly, Phelps' return drew fans and plenty of media. While he's not officially aiming for the 2016 Rio Olympics, he hasn't discounted the idea either.
Michael Phelps is back. The swimmer has rediscovered the joy of competition, something he'd not felt since the 2012 Summer Olympics in London.
There was something that I missed, and you know, there's being able to be back in the pool and being able to just go to the pool and be back at North Baltimore and swim with the group that we have now. It's incredible.
His comeback turned a Phoenix swim meet into an international event. 5 times as many journalists were accredited this year compared to last year, and the 1,200 seats at the Skyline Aquatic Center sold out in 48 hours.
I'm obsessed with them.
It was an opportunity too good to miss.
My kids are both swimmers on a local swim team here, and we were just so excited when we found out that Michael Phelps was going to be here because they've grown up watching him, and so he's really an idol of theirs.
I heard that he came out of retirement, bought my ticket as soon as I could.
Swimming only draws major public attention every 4 years at the Olympics, so the presence of this Baltimore native has been a blessing.
He talks about how he's having fun now and everything, and I think that can only help him. You know, relearning and rediscovering your love for the sport, you know, anything can happen.
In the end, Phelps took second place in the 100-meter butterfly and swam under the qualifying time for the U.S. Championships in August.
I'm not putting any pressure on myself to do, you know, to say I'm doing this or say I'm doing that in the future. I'm just enjoying myself right now in this road and this process and this journey. And you know, today was a fun day.
It was also a long day, with fans waiting around after dark for a coveted autograph.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The most decorated Olympian in history is back to have fun, but his competitive nature could quickly point him towards Rio in 2016 for his 5th Olympic competition.
And that story brings us to the end of the bulletin this Monday on Africa This Morning. Join us next as we take a look at other leading stories on the social media platform in our segment on Trend.